All Laravel fans and MoonShine fans, I welcome you to the Cut Code channel. Friends, I'm not going to drag on and we're going to continue with MoonShine 2 guide. Let's go. Friends, let's also touch on an important topic, namely authorization, access rights using MoonShine. We have a blog with a lot of authors, they have their own articles. And I would like to limit that the author, when he went to the admin panel, he saw only his own articles, not other people's, but only his own. He could delete them, edit them if necessary, but he could not have access to the articles of other authors. Let's implement this point. Firstly, let's go to roles and add the author role. Okay, then let's go to administrators and say, we already have Daniel. Let's give him the author role. Okay, let's go to articles and put the author role on a certain article. Just like Daniel. Okay, save, we see that the author is set. Let's go into the admin under Daniel. I don't remember what password is there, let's generate it again and go into his session. Okay, let's go to articles, we see all the articles, let's fix that. But before we do that, let's also play with the active actions in the resource. And we directly through the resource, without any policies, without any gates, we can disable certain actions, say, so that the resource does not have the create button, or edit and delete. And all this is done through the getActiveActions method. Let's see what we have there, let's return parent. Let's take all the available actions and for example, let's leave only create, okay, let's go back and refresh. And we see that we have the view, edit, delete buttons gone. Let's look at one more thing, let's say in this way, let's go to edit, but at the same time update is removed and we get access rights error 403. If you need to exclude something for everyone globally, then getActiveActions will be perfect. But let's get back to the topic of authorization and MoonShine use policies under the bonnet. There is also a console command that generates them, and in general it's all very convenient. Firstly, we need to add a property that we have a resource running based on policies. Okay, let's set this to true. Now when we go to the resource, we will always get 403 wherever we are, because there is no policy and it is false by default. Next, friends, we need to generate a policy. It is possible to generate it just through make policy, standard Laravel, but it will be by default from the standard user model, and it will not have a few actions, which are in the MoonShine summary operations. So you can make MoonShine policy right away, then choose which model we have it based on, we generate it. We have them appear in the standard directory. Let's take a look at the article policy first. We have true everywhere by default, instead of user we have MoonShine user, target model, and additionally we have must delete. Everywhere is true. Let's go back to the browser, refresh, and we can see that everything is now working, everything is available, because it's true everywhere. But if we, say, put false on update, go to edit, we will see a 403 error. So we can add some logic here. If we have user ID corresponds to item as far as I remember, author ID. Then he can look at it. Okay, look, even in the table itself, the edit remains only where the article belongs to us. And we can go in and look at it. The same thing, we can control deletion and even viewing at the policy level. And everything else that is required. But here, I think, you have a question. Okay, the buttons are gone, but I can still see the plaque. This point is also solved, but through a resource. Let's go to the resource and change the query method a little. We can adjust the query itself to get all the records. And for this it is enough to use the query method. Next is the parent query, with everything important. Only additionally we will specify where, author ID, current authorization ID. Okay, let's have a look, let's refresh, and we can see that we can see only the articles that belong to us. All the others are hidden. Friends. As a bonus, I'd like to show you the permissions package from the MoonShine developers. It is convenient to tick the checkboxes directly in the administrator to which resources we want to have rights to. Not through policy, but directly through the web interface. Let's see what it looks like. In general, I want to show it to you for a slightly different purpose. Again on the topic of authorization, but for those who will develop their own packages. And how cool and flexible it is in MoonShine. Let's install it first. Then we'll get under the bonnet. Okay, while it's installing, let's copy the next migration command. Next, we're prompted to change the MoonShine user in the MoonShine config to MoonShine user from the package. Let's look at it, make it, and at the same time talk about why it's needed. It's really just a time saver to not publish a model, but to take a ready-made one that will already have a trait. Let's go to MoonShine user. Let's change it right here. Yeah, from the permissions package. Notice it's simple, it just inherits the MoonShine user, but it adds the trait. If you've published everything to yourself, you have your own models, you can do the same thing yourself with this trait. Actually, the instructions say that as well. Then we need to open MoonShine user resource and add the trait to it. Well, and at the same time immediately change to this model from the package. And this is where a lot of people may have a good question. Where do we get the MoonShine user resource? We don't have it by default. We have it in the MoonShine vendor. You can, of course, copy and simply replace it in the MoonShine service provider. But there is a team that conveniently publishes all this stuff. MoonShine, publish, and then we select the system resources with you. We press enter, we have them in the directory, and that's what we're going to use now. Let's go to MoonShine user resource and first of all, following the instructions, change the model to the one we had in the package. Okay. Then we're going to add the trait. Now let's go to the admin area. To our system block, admins, to a specific admin. And we can see this component at the bottom. We can give all accesses at once, or give accesses to a specific resource, or to a specific action, so that we don't have to worry about policies and give this feature through the web interface. Now let's take a look under the bonnet. Because there are some interesting points there, and it's all implemented based on the MoonShine capability. All we're doing is adding a trait with permissions. Let's go into it, and we can see that we have some magic here. Well, it's not really magic, we've already discussed with you that we can add the resolve roots method, and we can add specific roots of our own. Where we have added an endpoint that will store permission. Now here's the interesting thing. MoonShine resources have a method called onBoot. And when we have a resource loaded, and it's active. When we are located in it, like we are in MoonShine user resource now. This method will be called, and we can add some specific logic inside. And the more interesting point is that, as it is implemented in Eloquent models, we can add a certain trait resource and inside we can implement a method that will have the name boot, and then the name of the trait. And it will be loaded into this onBoot method. What do we do in this case? When we have an active trait, we take all its pages, find a page with a form by type and add an automatic component to this page. Using the push to layer method we specify in which layer, in the bottom layer, that is it will be at the bottom under the main form. And which component we are adding, our permissions from the package. And who can see it? Only those users who have the administrator role. If we look at the component itself, it's a standard MoonShine component with a view that you can write yourself. And as I said earlier, we have them inherit the standard Blade components, and you can write your own even without the MoonShine component wrapper. That's the kind of interesting stuff, plus interesting onBoot and boot methods based on trade. And at the same time, I think you realized that right through the resource, through onBoot, you can add your components to certain pages, to a certain layer, without even creating or publishing additional CRUD pages. Not replacing those pages that are already there. This concludes the MoonShine tutorial. Remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and leave a like and comment. Stay tuned for the next lesson. Your feedback is important to us. Thank you for choosing MoonShine and for watching. See you in the next cut code video.